Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Awards Buzz. I'm Abe Friedtanzer.
I'm Stacey Yvonne.
I'm Sari Cohen.
We are here predicting the Golden Globe Film Awards to see which films might be ahead in this award season. We already have some ideas. This isn't an end-all, be-all, but it's an interesting snapshot of what might be. We'll start with the brand new category that's confusing everybody, cinematic and box office achievement. There are 8 nominees in this category. I do not know why. It's worth noting that Wicked is nominated for several major awards. Gladiator 2, Inside Out 2, and The Wild Robot are also nominated for a few things. This is a perplexing category. I don't really know what the requirements are. Like that Dune Part 2 wasn't even eligible, but it feels like Wicked is going to win this. Do we think something else might win this for some reason?
Well, I'm a little bit confused when it has the box office because that makes me think, oh, which one of these made the most money? In which case, there's not much you can vote on. Like you just kind of go by the numbers. And then it's like, okay, well then how many people went to the box office and requested? Like it's so strange. So I don't fully understand what this category is, except to say because of all the genre debates where things are getting put in musical and comedy that aren't necessarily musical and comedy, this is kind of another catch-all to still get them recognition is the only thing that I can think of. But yeah, I think that Wicked is kind of the shoe-in for this with yeah, probably Wicked.
I feel like this is really off of the success of Barbie and kind of what we saw with the commercial just success, the the way that that really um I think changed the game. Having a category like this makes sense because, so often there is the debate between like the box office favorite and like the strong indie feature. So having its own category makes sense. Wicked, I've been saying from the beginning, I think is going to just sweep across the board. I think so much of it is like Wicked and Amelia Perez. I think that's what we're
Mm.
um but for sure, I mean, we're as good as the other movies are. Um, what what could really compete against it, especially in this category? I don't see
Also,
anything.
isn't a
I guess if
cinematic
any
achievement? Yeah, go ahead, Stacey.
I was gonna say if anything, maybe Inside Out too, because it was just so big and it did get a lot of play. Plus, it's family movie, but yeah, again, it's one of those. This category is how you define it, and everyone's definition is going to be different.
I actually have Deadpool and Wolverine too, and sorry, that's not the name of the movie, but I think that reveals enough of it. Deadpool and Wolverine in number two, partially because Deadpool was nominated previously for Best Motion Picture Comedy Musical and Actor, and I feel like MCU is a box office achievement in itself. That said, aren't all the rest of the categories supposed to recognize cinematic achievement? So we will see what happens with this and how that works, and I will be curious if something other, if Alien Romulus wins, like what's the world, what's happening with the world, what's going on. So we'll see. Moving over to some of our below the line categories, we have best original song. And I know that in one of our previous conversations, we had talked about the idea of two songs from one, the short list, I think, we're talking about two songs from one film might disadvantage it. But I will just note that Barbie was nominated for 3 songs last year and still won here. And there is an Oscar rule now because of Enchanted that movie cannot have more than 2 nominations. So 2 of those songs were nominated at the Oscars and one still won. So here at the Golden Globes, when we got 3 last year for Barbie, it still won. And so I am tempted to predict Emilia Perez and to do El Mal, which is the Zoe song, as opposed to Mi Camino, which is the Selena song. What do you guys think?
I think that if the vote is split between Amelia Perez, then that's going to give Chris Bauer a chance to kind of jump in there. Um, and if we're talking just song, God bless Better Man. They have been trying, but for whatever reason, that just didn't catch on. So yeah, I think if it's not El Mel, then it's going to be Kiss the Sky.
Mm. Yeah, I think either one with Amelia Perez is going to win, but I think Elmal's probably the strongest contender. I don't, and as much as I love the Wild Robot, as much as I love Kiss the Sky and Chris, I just think, yeah, Amelia Perez again, just like Wicked, is gonna overshadow everything. Yeah.
The Last Showgirl, I think, would be an interesting thing to win here because it's not on the Oscar shortlist. I don't know that it's going to, though. Better Man, we should note that the song has since been disqualified from the Oscar shortlist because they realized that some of it was decades old, I think, some of the lyrics. And so it would be an interesting win here. I think that's
Hmm.
not necessarily a great look for the Golden Globes. That said, I don't know in terms of when people voted, it's possible that they voted before this was happening. So I don't know. And I do think that much as some people like Challengers, that song does not have a shot at all here, which is fine. There's got to be the one thing that's just happy to be nominated and could still have a vote splitting chance in best score, which I think is between
That's what I was
The
gonna say.
Brutalist
Yeah.
and Conclave. I am edging towards The Brutalist. What do you guys say?
This is actually one where I think Chris Bowers is going to jump out. So the thing about Chris is that like he just kind of came out of not nowhere, but it was very kind of low key. And then we just started seeing his name more and more places and everywhere. And I think people are taking notice to that. Plus, that score is fantastic if we're talking about like score and not lyrics. However, I think if Challengers does have anything going for it, it's going to be that score. People are going to be excited about that. I don't know that people are looking at Conclave for the score and maybe even the Brutalist, although I got to admit, for me, inside of the Brutalist, it was actually kind of distracting. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that that is going to be a very interesting one, but I think that Wild Robot has a little more of a chance than one would think.
I love Chris Bowers and I love the Wild Robot, but I totally see Amelia Perez. Just it's a musical. You know? I mean, this is really at the heart of it. Also, Challengers and Dune Part 2, you've got with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross and Hans Zimmer. I mean, that's some pretty stiff competition, but again, I do feel like Amelia Perez, there's that movie is certainly the front runner for me, especially with score.
I would almost say, but I know too many people who weren't necessarily thrilled it was a musical. I've
Oh,
heard, lots about the story, the acting, and of course Zoe and Carla, but not too much about the songs or the music, outside of some of the choreography. But yeah.
Well, I mean, if you put it against Wicked, I don't think there's any competition on in when we're talking about music. But the fact that the movie it's a musical, crime, drama, comedy, it just marries every genre together. When it comes to score, it's almost like they kind of have to win because it's so like
Mm.
part of their genre. They are a musical, so it would be strange for Amelia Perez not to win this one, I think.
I'd like to add another voice to this conversation, just to see what we think could be our best original score winner. Scott, what do you think with no preparation? Best original score, Golden Globe winner. What are you leaning towards here?
Score.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna actually say Brutalist.
Mm.
Wow.
I'm gonna say
That is
Brutalist.
that is where I'm leaning here too. We had talked about the Wild Robot as a possibility. I would note that Soul and Up are the last two animated winners, and you have to go back beyond that all the way to The Lion King for like that 80s, 90s golden age of animated stuff for that. So I think the Wild Robot, while certainly well received, does not have anywhere near the mass, popularity of those, which doesn't necessarily mean enough because I think that the score and song teams for the Wild Robot have been out there doing a lot of FYC stuff. But I think the Brutalist and Conclave, being the spoiler alert competitors for Best Motion Picture Drama, I think will help here because people are watching and respecting those movies a lot. But as we're talking about all of this stuff, best non-English film, as it's called, while I mentioned, in another conversation that Pan's Labyrinth, which won a few different Oscars, famously lost the lives of others at the Oscars for best foreign language film. The Golden Globes, I don't think, do that. And so while all we imagine is Light does have some popularity, this being anything other than Amelia Perez would be the biggest surprise of the night.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would agree. I would agree.
And I think that if people are saying, well, they're either voting for Amelia Perez or they're splitting it between all these others. I don't think that there's another one that has enough of a push that it would even, eke out for second. I think it's just Amelia Perez and the rest.
Totally. No, I totally agree. I can't see. I mean, especially because Amelia Perez is up against Wicked for Best Picture. So I can't imagine. I mean, I think Wicked's going to take Best Picture, and this Best Non-English is going to go to Amelia Perez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I would say in terms of the non-English language is that a lot of the members of the organization are from international. I mean, the whole entire organization is made up of international members. So this is the one place where maybe I'm still here can break through. I mean, but I do agree. I think the push for Amelia Perez seems so strong, and that's also like has gotten a lot of love in international marketplaces. But if there's one place this year where Amelia Perez might not win this category, it might be the Globes. But I just I don't know. Netflix, Netflix has been really, really pushing this movie very hard, and they've done a lot of mixers and tastemakers with the right people. And I think at the end of the day, as much as we'd like to discredit that, I think that plays a major factor in the way people vote. I remember last year there was a whole article that came out about how Robert Downey Jr. Wasn't sure if I was going to vote for him, but I met him and that meeting confirmed my vote. I remember that was a big article that came out, and I think that really kind of goes a long way. People don't understand that when Brendan Fraser won over Austin Butler, it's because everyone loves Brendan Fraser. I remember my interaction with Brendan Fraser, him taking my hand when I was talking about how much The Whale meant to me when I watched it. And I remember that feeling of like him looking me in the eyes and having that moment with me. And I don't think people realize that moment enough. And I think it's reasons why like people like Kristen Stewart like didn't win because she's awkward and weird and doesn't know how to have those moments towards people. Where there's a lot of other people who know how to play the game. And that's the reason why these tastemakers events happen, is because people feel those connections.
And it's funny because we're talking about this category, but this is a stacked category. These
Yes.
are quality films. And I understand completely what you're saying about, since this is kind of the international showcase, I guess, in that way. Like, I think that I'm Still Here is something that we talk about, but Seed of the Sacred Fig is another one where it's just been pushed like crazy. All We Imagine Is Light, it just talked about like crazy. In Girl with the Needles, kind of more of a low key kind of one where people love it, So there's a lot to choose from, but I do think that this is going to be the Amelia Perez year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would say that while Payal Kapadia's surprise Best Director nomination for All I Imagine Is Light shouldn't be discounted, and Fernando Torres being nominated for I'm Still Here, also 10 nominations for Amelia Perez is really something. I do look forward to the chaos, though, when Amelia Perez gets snubbed for Best International Feature at the Oscars and still nominated for Best Picture, and everybody's like, what is going on? But that's not an official prediction. I'm thinking it. I'm not committing to that yet. We'll talk about that another time.
Abe, I think Netflix would be devastated if that happens, honestly, because
we could have a whole long conversation about that, about especially like the idea we were talking about in the shortlist one about animated international documentaries. Should a film be nominated for all three, or is it better to recognize more? The whole point of these specialty categories to recognize these specialty films. And if you have one, even though someone as good as like Flea that's in all three, isn't that just taking space away from other deserving achievements? So
I'll do the tropes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stacey.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think that's kind of the culture we've created, though. And I would actually like to see it go to where you don't necessarily have to have 11 out of 15 categories nominated. It's just like it's the quality of the category. And really, if you win in any category, it should kind of hold the same weight. But I think that we've kind of made it where we look at those where it's like, well, they've gotten this many nominations, and so then that means this. And they got the top four: the best actor, best actress, director, film, and and then the rest is just kind of like whatever. So I would like to kind of see a
Oh, she
shift
froze.
in that perception, but I don't know exactly how you go about that.
Yeah, I think there's so much genre blending these days that it's really hard, and I'll give it to the how they're doing the award shows is they really are with expanding categories like this, doing their best to recognize that and make sure that the films and TV shows are celebrated justly. It's hard though, because then you're like, wait, is this a drama? Is this a comedy? Why is this why is this in this? Um, so there's so much of it that and so much crossover that I think it's smart to do it this way.
Yeah. The thing I was going to throw in here, again, going back to kind of the international audience of it all, in terms of not just people who watch it, but the voters, all the voters in Golden Globes are international. We talk about animated. I'm sorry, I know I'm like an hour late into this conversation now. I'm going to be like, I'm going to go walk backwards and talk about all this shit you already probably talked
That's
about.
next, Scott. We didn't get to animated yet, so you're good.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, like, the movie Flow, for example, right, is something that has been really kind of building up a lot of momentum. We've noticed in a lot of critics groups. It's kind of taking the lead. It's not really Inside Out's not picking up momentum that much. It's mainly just between Wild Robot and Flow. And I can see, since we're just talking about the general overview of things right now, I can see a world where Flow takes Golden Globes and then Wild Robots takes Critics' Choice. And I think that's a realistic kind of possibility.
Yeah.
I will say that Flow is also on the Oscar shortlist for Best International Feature, so very well could be nominated in that category as well. I do think looking at that race, it is possible, certainly, that could happen in terms of Flow winning. But we also look at Inside Out, number one. That film won the first one. Moana, the first film, lost to Zootopia. The first Wallace and Gromit was a year before the category was created at the Golden Globes. So to me, especially when we're talking about score and song, with the Wild Robot being on the cusp of wins there, I feel like it is a shoe-in here that there's not enough of a reason to look over to Flow. I also think, as delightful as it is, the fact that there is no dialogue may be a slight turnoff for people because it's just hard. Again, with something like Wild Robot, which is also about animals, except they talk. And so I feel like those two things, it's possible that Wild Robot's a little more um, accessible, and I think it's also an artistic marvel. If it was something a little bit too generic and blockbuster like, people may not be as into it, but I think it is independent feeling enough for such a high-powered film that it is strongly. I could even suggest we don't talk about Benedict this animated feature because I thought it was that far ahead, but obviously there's some possibility.
Well, if anything was going to be put in box office achievement, I would say it'd be Inside Out 2 and Moana 2, just because it's like they both, I mean, Inside Out 2, of course, has been a contender for a while, but the shelf life isn't as long, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't see either one of them being necessarily the biggest contenders for this one. Whereas, few months ago, Inside Out 2 would have been the top. But again, now we have these kind of newer entries that are going above and beyond. I think Wallace and Gromit might actually fare a little bit better than we think. Like, if we're going to have an upset, that's it, because that has a huge international appeal that it just does not have in the States. And so that'll be interesting to see if maybe that picks up a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, I think Wild Robot is going to be the one.
I totally agree. I think Wallace and Gromit is getting so much love. I think people are still really impressed with that film. But also Wild Robot, I don't know that it's enough like that. I think, yeah, I'm totally in agreement.
Moving on to some of our non-specialty categories, we have best screenplay. And like when we talked about the shortlist, we're getting to a film that we haven't mentioned at all because it's not a contender in any below the line categories, and that's Anora. With the caveat that Anatomy of a Fall won last year, which could be like, oh, maybe Amelia Perez, something international, not in English. I think this is where Anora comes into play.
Mhm. I
It's a
don't.
tough one. It's so funny. Honora has been a roller coaster. It really has been like, blah, blah, and then no, not so much. And it just keeps kind of ebbs and flows in terms of like opinions of whether it's actually good or not. And in fact, they, of course, they just had that conversation where she said, that they didn't use an intimacy coordinator, and that kind of like people had a lot of differing opinions, but it kind of shed this light on Honora that I don't know if it's going to be able to come out from under. Um, this one, oddly enough, I think A Real Pain might have a better chance than what people might think. That was such a solid movie, and that was a really solid script that I think a lot of people, the people who have watched the movie, really respond to. It's just have there been enough eyes on it?
I think also Conclave is a contender here.
Mm.
This is kind of up the Globe's alley.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That I feel like if it's gonna come in for something, it's gonna be here. Yeah, I think that could overtake Nora, in my opinion.
I'm gonna throw it out there. I think Substance can win this
I
category.
was thinking about, yeah. This
I
is
just
exciting.
think that
Have this
we're
competition,
really downplaying the love that this movie has been getting across the board. I really like it. It's weird because I know everyone's like Honora's has like been that festival darling that everyone's been throwing out left and right, left and right. And we always talk about this every year where like all these critics groups come out. And I noticed even with the neon thing, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they put out a thing over the holiday break where there's a poster of like all the times she won. But if you go through it, a lot of it is breakthrough, breakthrough,
Mm.
breakthrough. There's some actresses in there, but there's breakthrough, breakthrough, breakthrough. And if you notice, that's the one where they keep pushing like her, because I do think she's the one who has the strongest shot of all of them. But the screenplay, I mean, when you look at some of Sean Baker's other movies, like the screenplay kind of similar in certain ways. I don't know. And I think the substance just it has that freshness to it. It
Hmm.
has the Hollywood thing going for it. It has the international factor going for it. There's just things where it plays really well. And again, the thing what I love about the Globes, everyone shits on the Globes, but I love that the Globes were exciting. I love that like it really throws an interesting mix in here. That we can see something like this being a complete upset. But I don't know, Stacey. I kind of agree with you too about Real Pain. If I had to pick, I think my two picks are actually between Real Pain and The Substance winning this category.
Hmm.
I want to jump on that because I just want to say that I feel like Corley could win for Best Director in this. Like
Mm.
that's where the substance can hit, where the Brutalist is a heavy favorite, but you're so right about this film, and I feel like Corley would be the surprise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially with Denny missing the director category, which I know was like a huge thing that everyone was like, how again, how does this happen? Uh, I think that's yeah. I feel like did we talk about I'm sorry, did we talk about picture drama? I know I jumped in late.
Oh,
Did
we
I
saved that for last, Scott. We got there
okay,
later.
okay, okay,
We'll get there
okay,
in
okay,
3 hours. We'll be
okay.
there.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're jumping into I think we naturally kind of segued into Best Director.
Okay.
And this was the one that notoriously John Chu got left out of it.
Yes.
So I think with him out of it, I would love to see Corley. I think it will be between Corley and Ed Berger.
Hmm.
I think this is where Brady Corbett is going to start his award season domination. I think that even if you have
Mm.
problems with the Brutalist, even if you couldn't get through the Brutalist, you're like, this guy is doing something interesting. And so I feel like even if, again, the Brutalist doesn't win anywhere else, I also wouldn't count out Jacques Audiard because I think Emilia Perez, still every category has to be discussed as a contender because it's just nominated in so many places. Similarly, Sean Baker, I think it would be very surprising to see Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine as Light. That said, Julian Schnabel won for Danny Elfman Butterfly back in the day. Martin Scorsese won for Hugo one year. Like there's these categories are a little bit strange sometimes. So I'm tended to say that Brady is far enough ahead, but I think there's a case to be made for almost anybody except for Payal upsetting.
I think that Brady is going to have just, he's experiencing a little bit of fatigue right now. I've been hearing opinions about like, because I was talking with someone about the idea that this wasn't a true story. Because even as I was watching, I went to Wiki and I was like, wait a minute, what happened next? Who is this guy? I think that there are some strong things, but I think with an ending that's kind of highly contested and a lot of people asking, is he the one to tell the story? And why is he the one to tell the story? And that kind of thing, it could remove some of the excitement, I guess, the initial excitement. It'll be interesting to see, though, if that gets to these voters. I said Ed Berger just because they've been really good about explaining kind of the directorial challenges with that and how he kind of overcame them. And of course, it's just a solid movie all around. But again, I'm with Scott in terms of I would love to see Coralie get this and just kind of do a little upset.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I would actually put Sean Baker pretty low on this list to win, which I feel like a couple months ago, he was like the front runner to win.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know what happened with Honora in general, but I feel like that's how I feel like all the categories for this movie have kind of went. It just sort of like, besides Mikey, I just feel like everyone else, like it's dropped. And it's it's the same way that I felt like with Amelia Perez in a lot of ways. Like these movies, like it's a weird thing that I feel like is happening where like stuff is like peaking and there's a lot of positive buzz out of the festivals, but then it's like by the time it gets to that point, it's just like losing like the gusto anymore. It's very weird, you know. But it's so hard to kind of know because we had a March film the year before with Everything Everywhere. We had Oppenheimer and Barbie like summer releases. So it's really hard, but I think that's because it says a lot about the industry, the state of the industry that right now is that, you know, when more and more people come out and watch these movies, the reactions are starting to get more and more mixed. I mean, I said this on I think on the last stream that we did together. I know I haven't been on here in a while, but like I said this, I put out a tweet about The Brutalist that I know a lot of people who don't like The Brutalist,
Mhm.
regardless of it had 99% or whatever the stupid rate is on Rotten Tomatoes. It's those conversations. People don't want to hear the truth that like just because a number is somewhere doesn't mean that's reflective of what like voters are feeling because they might not post their things because a lot of them just do interviews and they don't want to post how they feel about something to lose the chance of getting an interview,
Mm.
which is a real problem and a real thing that happens. As much as people want to pretend that it doesn't, it does happen. So I think that's in a nutshell what you can be seeing. And like Abe said, and I think he said it very, poignantly, is that the Brutalist to me, if it loses everything else, the one category that I think it's most deserving is directing. Because what he was able to do with such a tight budget and the way he makes this movie look so epic and grand in scale, I mean, like it's just a gorgeous looking movie. I have so many issues with the second half of this movie. It kind of almost destroys the brilliance of the first half. It's like a half of a masterpiece. It really is. The first half of this movie is almost like a masterpiece. I would say that. But like the second half, Jesus, some of the decisions that are made,
Well,
I don't know.
I'm a pushback. I think the second half was great. That epilogue is where I wanted to strangle someone.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Because Yeah, we could talk about that forever.
Oh,
But
but
Sarah, you were
we
about
should
to
do a brutalist breakdown. Like we should have a
should.
like
honestly.
I think
honestly have like a brutalist breakdown. I would love to actually deep
if you're
dive in that.
watching this video and like these very, very long dives into each of these films, let us know and we will have these. Unfortunately, we have 6 acting categories and 2 picture categories to get through in probably about 15 minutes.
And this is
But
why they're like Scott
watching
needs to stay off these things. He's like
no,
take stuff off
we
these.
love talking about this stuff, and if you like listening to it, let us know because we want to do this more, but we want to know who's going to win. So I'm going to move us over quickly to Best Supporting Actor and going to ask that if anybody has a good reason, like the wedding objection, a good reason that Kieran Culkin is not going to win this, please speak now, or we'll move on to Supporting Actress.
If it's a
Stacey?
brutalist year, Guy Pearce might have a chance because he's phenomenal. But yeah, I think this is Kieran all the way.
Okay.
And deservedly so. He does it
No question about
so
that.
good. Oh,
Oh,
I
we
was
can
like, I
have a
want to
longer-
strangle him and hug him in the same line. It's perfect.
we can have a longer conversation about Supporting Actress. I think we would all agree this is probably between Zoe and Ariana.
Yep.
Who do we feel is ahead right now?
I don't know that Ariana is being considered for actress for her acting performance as much as people think. I think Cynthia 100%. Ariana, I don't know as much, and I could see either Margaret Qualley maybe jumping into this, or even Isabella. You know, just as a fun little surprise. Felicity Jones should be more considered, but I don't think enough people made it to that second half, and that's where she shines. So.
Like you've got 2 pop stars here in the running, between it's between Selena and Ariana. Um, I think Zoe is definitely the one to beat, but
Mhm.
also, you're talking about an international voting body, and Isabella Rossellini, I mean, she's phenomenal.
They
She's an icon. So it really depends on the voters and what they connected with. And I think you'll probably see a theme running through. Like once we kind of see like who's picking up momentum, you'll know what mood everyone's been in this year.
I always just look at how the overall nominations totals are, and I think Wicked did not perform as it should have with John M. Chu and Jonathan Bailey not nominated. So that gives me that Zoe is far enough ahead. I would love just like the Amelia Perez thing, I'd love the chaos of Selena Gomez winning, just because everybody like, what is happening? What's going on? But I don't think you can watch that film and vote for Selena over Zoe with them in the same category. And so I think Zoe is far enough ahead. I would not be surprised one bit by Ariana. That said, on the note of another Ariana DeBose did not win the Golden Globe for West Side Story. Her awards season journey started later. And so I think it's worth noting that sometimes there are different picks of the Golden Globes, even if someone else is going to sort of latch on later. Because I think Ariana Grande may still win the Oscar, especially if Wicked does take everything there. But I am not predicting that to happen here at the Golden Globes.
What do you think that I why do you think that is, Abe? Like is it just a performance driven? Is it about the mixer things? What do you think it is? Because one thing I will tell you that I feel like with Wicked that they're not doing enough of. I mean, poor John M. Chu, who just had a kid, is like out doing everything and cartwheels and going into the sing-along screenings and tweeting out stuff. And I feel like they did a really weird push for like because I guess because of the Broadway of it all, they did a lot of Wicked in on the East Coast, where I felt like they did like a couple mixer things there because I think they're trying to get the Broadway crowd excited. But I'm not really sure if they did enough on the West Coast yet to kind of really do
True.
it.
I don't know.
I know they did like one or two things. I know they started it off here. Then they had those kind of Q&As very early on when before the movie came out. But then after the movie came out, I feel like it's just been poor John M. Chu going around going like, hey,
I look at it from a historical perspective. I think about 2 years in particular, 2017 and 2021, where they were sort of before the Golden Globes, while they're not necessarily important in the overall Oscar race, they still do sort of set something. Like Willem Dafoe and Laurie Metcalf, I thought were the front runners in 2017 for the supporting categories. And then Sam Rockwell and Allison Janney won, and they just sort of steamrolled everything. And from then on, after all the Critics Awards, it was just them for the, more popular awards bodies. Similarly, in 2021, wasn't sure what happened. That was the year that things weren't really televised, or that people weren't there to accept, so it wasn't that exciting. But that was when Howard the Dog won both supporting categories, and then Troy Kotsur and Aria DeBose ended up winning the Oscars. And so there's something with the Golden Globes, they've, especially best motion picture drama, where they gave it to Avatar and all these other films that didn't end up going all the way 1917, etc. And so I feel like there's a shift in award season where those of us who have been paying attention are like, this is the Gotham winners, these are the critic winners, these are the Spirit nominees. This is when things sort of get more serious and cemented. And that doesn't always lead. The fact that the Grand Budapest Hotel, won for comedy musical picture, and Boyhood won, and then Birdman won the Oscar. Like sometimes there's just things can change a little bit. But it's just such an interesting journey. I don't know that I pay attention as much, Scott, as you're saying, to like what the industry is doing. I'm just seeing what's won in the past and how Golden Globes are sort of a tastemaker of sorts, but it can be the wrong flavor, and then it gets replaced and changed out as it goes.
I like that. What was Howard the Dog? How did I miss
Howard
the
the Dog.
Thank you. I was like, who was Howard?
Howard the Dog, the sequel to
Okay,
Howard the
no,
Duck. He
I'm with you
turns
now.
into a
I
dog.
know. I
It's
was like,
cinematic and box office achievement frontrunner for 2020,000. I don't know. All right, let's keep it going a little bit here. I'm inclined to do drama first, then comedy, because I think comedy is a little more exciting. Drama
yeah.
actress is a category that baffles me because I do not know who's going to win. The easy choice would be Angelina Jolie, but I think people are taking her out of their Oscar predictions because they're not sure how she's going to do. And I know that, Isabelle Huppert won one year for Elle, and I don't know what to do here. No idea.
I cannot see them giving it to Pam. I love it. I love the idea of it. I thought she was great in that film, but she's never going to be an actor's actor. And I don't see them doing that, unfortunately, because I think that that was a good performance. I loved Lee, but it did not make a splash. It just kind of came and went. The Room Next Door is very good, but again, just kind of a little too low key. uh Baby Girl could actually do so. I mean, listen, you shake your head, Scott, but people love that film, and it is good. It's a good film. It subverts expectations. It's not what you think it's going to be. Plus, it does have a mostly international cast, which is very funny to me because they're all playing Americans, but except for Antonio. But that could be a fun little like surprise. But otherwise, I think this has got to be Angelina.
Yes, everybody on this list are megastars. And then you've got Pamela Anderson, who, like you said, she's never going to be an actor's actor, but she's so good in this. And I feel like this would be the one for her. This would be the one. That said, and we were talking about this, Abe, like Angelina Jolie is while she's the shoo-in, it's not my personal favorite. And I know you shook your head, Scott. There's so much love for Baby Girl right now, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody's buzzing about it. I wouldn't be too surprised if the voters swung towards Nicole Kidman for this.
Really leaning towards Scott.
I'm gonna throw it out an oddball. I'm gonna go with the Fernanda for I'm Still Here.
Wow.
I can see it.
I'm gonna say that because again, I'm thinking international voters, and I'm thinking people kind of looking at this and saying we wanna make this category stand out and not pick an American. And that's why the Maria
And
thing
Nicole
kind of
Kidman.
also works because of the fact that the director Pablo, um, you know, he's a very like acquired taste filmmaker. I really admire that man a lot, but most things that you hear about his work is like this movie's so boring. He's so boring, such a boring filmmaker. But he, to me, is an exquisite filmmaker. It's just it's like you got to be in the right mindset and you got to know what movie you're getting into. I mean, he really has made like kind of the same movie three different times with three different stories and three different actors, but like it's like very kind of similar, like the rise and fall of like the person, and it's just like okay, but
Well,
I can see that.
kind of to your point though, is we're talking about Baby Girl, we're talking about Foreign Press. It is all pretty much an all international cast. And it has a female director who is not in the nominated category. So I could see people being like, well, since she didn't get, best director, then maybe we'll throw her kind of to Nicole Kidman because she is a fan favorite just across the board with that as well. And I think that that is a movie that took chances, but is still very safe. And so a lot of people kind of, felt some way like hyping it up. Like this year's Barbenheimer was oddly like Nosferatu and Baby Girl for a Christmas feature. So I think it's fresh enough in people's minds where they're thinking maybe. So we'll see.
I Stacey, you made a really, really good point, and I think that's something that we also don't consider enough is the release dates of something and the voting.
Hmm.
If a particular movie is sort of like screening, and I think that's like why, listen, that's why I think Complete Unknown got into Critics' Choice, right? And Picture, because it literally started screening as everyone was voting. And I go back to 1917 year, and I will use, the organization we're all part of, how Universal, the last movie every member saw was 1917. And we went to see that movie that weekend right before voting ended. So, if we all went back and revoted now, I would probably guess that Parasite would have won with us too. But I think because 1917 was so fresh in everyone's mind and there was all that kind of like talk about the hype that everyone kind of was like, maybe I'm going to vote for this. And that's what I think makes it, the Oscars are always like kind of like the wild card because everything's been out for a long time
Right.
and everyone's seen it and they're really just now they're voting on their favorites. Which one did I really like? Which performance did I really like? As opposed to us kind of going like as critics going like, I just saw this. Like, do I really like this one as much or do I like the Brutalist that I saw back in September? Like, which one do I really holds more weight, Wicked or this? That's if you notice even on my favorites of lists, I put Brutalist back in at the end because there's enough that I like about it that I took something else off my list because I was like,
Mm.
there's still enough about this. But we can't discredit what you just said, Stacey. I think it's so important that those voting windows and when people are seeing things for the first time, not repeat viewings, first time,
Right.
and how it reacts to them, that it really does skew a vote.
I do want to say that I think Fernanda will benefit from for the Oscars being the film being on the Best International Feature shortlist, hopefully nominated. I can't imagine it wouldn't be. And I actually think she will leapfrog on a lot of the much more internationally famous contenders to an Oscar nomination, even if someone else wins here, who I believe will be Pamela Anderson. But I'm not entirely
Ooh.
confident in order to keep us moving because we're having such a good long conversation. For best drama actor, I believe it is Timothy Chalamet versus Adrian Brody. I am on team prediction Chalamet.
Ooh,
This is a crazy
yeah,
category.
yeah.
This category is nuts. But speaking of Baby Girl, everybody's baby girl, their favorite baby girl, Timothy Chalamet. And with it being fresh in mind, I think that there's a very big chance that he gets that.
I yeah, I agree too. I think it's between those two. I, however, see Adrian Brody walking away with this one. Just my gut. Just my gut on it.
And I mean, I understand that, but I think if it's a performance that is informed by the movie, and I think that that's something that we kind of have to think about is was this movie great because of the performances or was this performance great because of the movie? And I think for Adrian Brody, for me, his performance was great because of the movie. I would put Rafe Fiennes above Adrian Brody, honestly. I thought he did. I would put Coleman Domingo above, them all. But with this being the Globes, I think that it's going to be a Timothée Chalamet day.
That's a really again, Stacey, you're on fire right now because I love all these thought processes behind this. Um, I think Complete Unknown is nothing without the performances.
Mhm.
I mean, and this is coming from someone who has really enjoyed um a lot of James Mangold movies. I think from a directing point of view, this is probably his least interesting. Outside of Indiana Jones, sorry, I gotta throw that one in there. Nothing's worse than Indiana Jones. Um, but like it really rests on the performances. I mean, Monica, Timothy, Edward. I know in the last time we talked, I was kind of poo-pooing on that, but I was like really kind of thinking about it. Like the performances really do elevate this movie more than I mean, the script's not that great in this movie. It's very one note. It's like he's an asshole, but and like don't you
And
hate
she's
him,
long
but don't you kind
suffering, and yeah.
he's suffering. Don't they have this weird kind of awkward chemistry where they kind of love each other, but they kind of hate each other? But like, what is this going on here? Yeah. Poor Elle Fanning in this movie. That's the one person who I don't know what she's doing. I just feel bad for her. Again, I love Elle Fanning to death. She's such a
Mhm.
great actress, but in this movie, I'm just like, no, I don't know. But again, to your point, I do feel like this movie would be nothing without the performances.
I want to move us over to comedy musical actor rather than actress because I think the general consensus right now is that the Oscar lineup may come exclusively from the drama field, which makes me have no idea what's going to happen with comedy musical actor. I am tempted to lean Glenn Powell.
I see Sebastian Stan in this one.
I see the process. I see the process, Abe, behind Glenn Powell. I think for Globes, that is a solid pick. I would almost though see Glenn Powell for Twisters for the Hitman. For whatever reason, the Hitman didn't. I don't think they quite knew what to do with it because on one hand it was Richard Linklater, but on the other hand it's this zany kind of comedy, like a Hitman comedy, and so they didn't quite know where to fit it in or what to do with it marketing wise. But I think that that's a solid choice. I is Jesse is good, but he's Jesse. He's Jesse Eisenberg and everything. It's he's playing
He's
himself.
got the Kristen Stewart. He's got the Kristen Stewart problem. He's got the Kristen
100%.
Stewart problem.
Yeah.
He's very very like awkward, shy. He's been a little bit like he did more stuff this year, and I feel like he was a little bit more playful and stuff.
Yeah.
Just like how we saw Kristen start doing that. But there's a reason why those two have such dynamic chemistry because they're essentially the same people.
Yeah. And I
Just
think the upset in this, the interesting one could be Hugh Grant. I think
yes.
that he might jump out. Now, I am glad that Sebastian Stan was put with a different man for this one. And I think that that actually gives him a better chance. But yeah, I think that this is, oh, I would love to see Glenn Powell, but I just don't know. So we'll see. See.
I could actually see Eisenberg being an upset in this.
Mm.
Like I could see him coming through. Um, but I think just Sebastian Stan has the edge in this one, just slightly. Also, I mean, when you yeah, when you start breaking it down, I'm also like, but Hugh Grant. I could imagine that. I could
Grant
imagine.
won this same award 30 years ago for Four Weddings and a Funeral. Wouldn't it be the exact to win the same exact prize for Heretic feels a little bit like heresy, but also could be very
I
entertaining.
think that
I
that's
also
what
would love
they're shaking it up.
for the chaos argument. I'm going to say let's give Sebastian Stan both Best Actor prizes, and then see him get nominated for an Oscar for neither. But that's not going
It
to
would explode. It would explode. And poor
Uh
Gabriel LaBelle.
oh, poor
Poor
Gabriel
Saturday
Abel.
Night.
with the
Yeah,
movie
Because
not
that poor
nominated,
movie.
he has no chance, sadly.
such a good movie, but just the wrong year, I think. I think it's just the wrong season.
And
Could you
Jesse was
imagine
just
if they
Clemens was
put
great
if
too.
they put Saturday Night for Emmys instead? Like if they put it out like on Peacock or
Mm.
NBC and kind of did it as a lead in to Saturday Night, like this new season, how much better the movie would have done? Like I thought about that from the moment I watched this movie. I was like, I loved it so much. it was like seeing that at Toronto, watching all those cast people come in and like everyone kind of really nailed those performances. But I'm like, who's gonna watch this? Like I'm
Yeah.
like it feels like a great TV movie that like if you put that in there for Emmys, I feel like it would have won. I really do.
I want to keep us going. We are so close to the end with so much conversation left to go. I'm going to ask every person to say one last name to start off our best comedy musical actress pick. Who is your pick to win this? Just the names to start.
Cynthia.
Skip. um, oof, my goof.
I'm
I
gonna say
don't think, yeah, I
Demi
don't
Moore for
think
me.
Mikey has a chance. I don't think Mikey, unfortunately, I don't think she has a chance. I think she kind of
I,
lost it.
What
I
would
will
Yeah,
say
I
Mikey.
know that's your pick.
Mikey.
I don't see it. I could see Demi Moore. Um,
Amy Adams?
be, well, because there wasn't enough Wicked within the Globes in general, I don't necessarily see Cynthia taking this. And I don't think enough people liked Amy Adams or that movie. But Carla could jump in with this one,
Carla's
which would be
international. The
interesting.
film got the most nominations. Carla should not be discounted.
Yeah, that's tough. I would like to see Demi though. She would actually kind of be my want. I Cynthia's a front runner for sure, but I don't think it's the
See,
end all be all.
I think Carla's gonna take home the SAG award, but I feel
Mm,
that I
I
just
think this is the most exciting year for Best Actress in 2020, when
yeah.
everybody was winning different things. Frances McDormand ultimately won, which was theoretically the least exciting possible outcome, despite her clear talent. Um, we have two more categories left. We're going to end with musical comedy because that one is I'm sure we all have different picks for that one. But for drama, I just want to remind everybody that in 2018, something that happened that was completely shocking and ultimately had no real bearing on award season, but was crazy, which was when Bohemian Rhapsody won this award. And I think that there is the case to be made for a far more critically respected film, A Complete Unknown, to win based on all that recency thing and based on a vote split between the two frontrunners, Conclave and The Brutalist. I am not picking it. I just want to state that it is a possibility. I am team Conclave for this win.
Well, everyone knows Nickel Boys was my top overall, just
But it
suggested.
cannot win without
Unfortunately,
any other nominations, right? Like that's
yeah,
crazy.
it didn't get well, but hey, we're going crazy. No, but
We are going crazy, yes.
I think it just didn't get enough press or enough push. But uh, I think that because of the Bohemian Rhapsody thing, because that's still fresh in a lot of people's minds, I think that actually kind of hurts A Complete Unknown. Because again, is this a movie that is good because of the performances, or are the performances good because of the movie? And I think that A Complete Unknown, again, is good because of the performances. I don't know anyone that's been like, this is my favorite movie. I could watch it over and over, but they will talk about, oh, Timothy Chalamet was fantastic. Edward Norton is fantastic. Monica is fantastic. So, but yeah, I think this is going to be between The Brutalist and Conclave, with an edge to Conclave, because again, a lot of people didn't make it to that second half of Brutalist.
The Brutalist, it is the most nominated film, right? Isn't it the most?
Amelia Perez is, but it's not in that category.
Okay.
But yeah,
So,
the
right.
Brutalist has acting nominations, yes. More so
Yeah.
than just rest.
And I feel like just with the rebrand, I feel like the Brutalist has a little bit of an edge here. I think just yeah. This would be the award show to win it.
I'm gonna throw out something real quick about the Brutalist. I saw the Brutalist when I was at Venice very briefly, in between a lot of other things that I was doing. It was one of like 3 movies I saw. Um, the reaction from that, based on, again, I'm judging this based on international voting bodies. That was the movie.
Mm.
That was the movie. And I'm going to throw away this a complete curveball in this say I'm actually between The Brutalist, and I heard a lot of international voters really like September 5th.
I was gonna say that might jump up in something, but I don't
I
know.
just don't think with no other nominations, I don't think it can do it. I don't think it shows that there's not enough support behind it. And when you look at The Brutalist, got all these acting nominations, Conclave director, screenplay. I don't believe the only reason to say that is Bohemian Rhapsody. That didn't have a director nomination, screenplay. And I think that is such an outlier. Obviously, I think September 5 is a much bigger film. I think they're a better film. I think there are a lot of people who don't like it, but I just think if there wasn't a front runner, like if this was like best actor in a comedy where like there's no front runner, sure that could be fine. But I think with The Brutalist and Conclave, I think it would be and same with Dune Part Two. I don't get the argument enough that it's popular because the nominations it just one didn't get anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but
I don't know. It's just hard because to me, when I watch September 5th, and Abe, you know how I feel about September 5th. I don't think it's as good as a lot of people made it out to be.
It's
But
fine.
it's fine. Exactly. I mean, but I feel like the only other area that it belongs in to me, if I'm talking about it like just again, not taking my own personal bias towards the movie off the table, I think the scripts really did well done, and the movie as a whole like works for what it does. So to me, it doesn't belong in any acting categories because I don't think the performances are that strong. I think it's if anything, it works as an ensemble piece because it's a lot of people, but I don't think the ensemble is that like there's not enough that the characters do to really make it push for any of these categories. I'm not surprised whatsoever that this is not showing up in any acting categories.
Who
So,
directed that film? Who directed September 5?
Tim Falbon.
oh,
See, I was a little bit confused to your point, Scott, about why it was even in the running. And I don't know if it's just that they put the dollars behind it or what it was, because you look at films like The Order, which was fantastic. You have Juror Number Two, which was fantastic. Even Hard Truths, that are in the same kind of talky, fast-paced kind of vein. And I'm like, what does September 5 have that they don't? And I can't parse it out. So yeah, it's one where it feels as though it is just like the one to say. It's like, oh, I don't like any of those. We'll choose September
I
5.
I think there are some. I am a passionate supporter of the film. I think there are those, but I do not think it has enough to win here. Obviously, we have more to
Yeah.
say about this. But for our final category, I will surprise you all by saying, especially since this is the only win I have a prediction for, I am betting on The Substance.
Mm.
Wow.
I think that
Only
Wicked did not
Familia
sell enough.
Perez,
I don't know. Amelia
only
Perez is probably
Familia
the smart
Perez and
choice,
Wicked split, then
but
I
also
think,
Lenora. There's so much. I don't know.
yeah.
This is like one also, La La Land won for this, right?
Mm.
So I feel like they could go with that musical theme. And again, like Wicked, no big surprise here. Wicked brings home the trophy.
so my take on this is international box office. And the international box office for Wicked has not been as strong
Mm.
as they wanted it to be. And again, this is just, and we're forgetting too that there was like this whole revamp that just happened with the Globes.
Right.
And there's now like 300 members. It used to be 80, 85 or 86. There's now 300 members who are voting, most of which you can go on their website and you look through them. I know like 10 of them because they're part of, the organization we're all in. But like a lot of them, I don't know from Adam. I don't know these people. I've seen a few of them at screenings, but for the most part, I would say I don't know 80% of the voting body of the Globes. I'd never seen them before in my life. So I can't, it's hard because I think this is a real kind of like, we can't base it on the statistics of like what Abe did in the past because I think he's smart looking at the history of things. But when you add and mix things up, I think when you change the voting body, shit can be stirred. You don't know what's going to happen. But the Wicked thing, as much as I love the movie, I don't know if it's going to do it here just because of the fact that, uh, just because of the fact of the international box office on it.
And
But
it can still win the Oscar for Best Picture. It just this is not
oh,
a
Oh
I
stepping
yeah,
agree.
stone.
I
And
agree.
I think
I
it's
just
in
wanna-
for Oscar.
feel like
Yeah.
so because of that, then Amelia Perez would be
Mhm.
the other one. Like if they don't go Wicked, I think but I think the odds of them going with a musical, like, I
They've gone
think,
with
That's
Dreamgirls,
true.
Sweeney Todd, West Side Story, like other, they do like
yeah,
musicals, and so I think that's very likely. And this is certainly one of the more popular ones. But I think we will all be watching on Sunday night with curiosity, and we will all be both disappointed and wrong in a number of cases because we have agreed on very little throughout today, which I have had fun with. I hope everyone else has enjoyed, and we will be make sure to check out our Golden Globe TV winner predictions, our SAG nomination predictions for TV and film, and coming up our Oscar predictions, which I think we'll block off like 5 hours to talk about those because we'll have a lot to say. But thank you everyone for being here. I'm Abe Friedtanzer.
I'm Stacey Yvonne.
I'm Sari Cohen.
And I'm Scott Menzel.
Thanks for being here. What the words was.